What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Robert Cessna. Cease. The Aggies hit the road this week to face Florida, and they're looking to stop a program-worst 10-game losing streak on the road that dates back to 2021 when Mike Elko was still defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I'm always infatuated by the stats like this because I looked at back at the end of last year. I did something on this. The only team that had lost more road games was Northwestern, which went ahead and beat Wisconsin. Then they won like 3 in a row. So A&M, of all the Power 5 conference, and at that point I still counted the Pac-12, they lost the most road games in a row of anyone. You think Vanderbilt and Pitt, you'd think somebody would have lost more, but A&M has the longest road losing streak among, you might say, good teams.
And to be fair, a lot of those games have been pretty close. You go back and you look at it. You think about the 21 season. Max Johnson leads a comeback in Death Valley when he was still playing for LSU. The next year, Connor Wegman almost gets the Hail Mary against South Carolina, and that was the only time South Carolina's beat A&M. You think about last year, right? They had Tennessee on the ropes. They had Ole Miss on the ropes. They had 2 years ago, they had Alabama on the ropes at Bryant-Denny Stadium.
And that ugly loss at Auburn.
My gosh, the 13-10 game.
But I'm just saying, you're right. So you'd think they would luck out and win a game. Programs win one of those games. No, A&M finds a way to lose, whether it's the nobody covering the wide receiver. And you're right. I always think back to that Mac Johnson game because I give Johnson all the credit. But I felt A&M should have won that game. But that A&M wants to put all that in the past, and they can if they win Saturday.
Well, let's dive into the matchup. Hey, first of all, let's rewind a little bit. Everybody wanted to know how Connor Wegman was going to do last week against McNeese. We get it. It's McNeese. They're not a good team, but the basics seemed to be there. The footwork seemed better. The accuracy was better. He didn't put up video game type numbers, but he did what you would probably expect a quarterback to do in that kind of setting.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised how he played, considering it was. I was kind of surprised they didn't let him play one more series in the third quarter, because he only played like 25 minutes. But that also tells me that as far as Elko and Klein, hey, we're good with. We don't need to put him out there for you guys to see where he's at. We know where he's at. So I think in a way that was another vote of confidence.
Something interesting from the SEC teleconference today, somebody asked Elko, hey, why did Reed get in the game so early? Why'd you put Marcel Reed in the second quarter? And he said, we wanted to get him some reps with that first team offense. And he's pretty frank, like, in this day and age of football, you're one play away from playing a backup. A story A&M fans know all too well the last few years, Wegman included. And, Reed was a guy who showed a lot of flash in the Texas Bowl when Henderson went down with that nasty arm injury. And I think Saturday showed he's A&M's number 2 guy without a doubt.
And I've said all along, I don't think it'd be a slap in Wegman. I wouldn't mind seeing Reed have 1 or 2 series a week, no matter who they're playing, just because he's such a running threat, but yet he can throw the ball. A lot of times you see these, quarterbacks coming in to go ahead and run the Wildcat, and all they do is run 9 out of 10 times. Well, Reed doesn't have to do that.
Well, speaking of a 2-quarterback system, looks like that's what Florida's going to throw at A&M this weekend. Of course, Graham Mertz, he started the season for Florida, got a concussion in their season-opening loss to Miami. They start DJ Lagway, a guy Elko and A&M are very familiar with. Seemed like they tried to make a push late, but Lagway's was committed to Florida for quite a long time. We even got a good glimpse at him several times here in the Brazos Valley. He played A&M Consolidated, played Rudder a couple times, won all those games, and had some really nice performances against our local schools. But I think a lot of people are very curious how Florida is going to manage their quarterback situation. And, there's that old adage, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterback.
Well, I think they do have a sense of urgency because Napier, third year, not happy coming off a couple weeks ago, just getting blasted by Miami at home. So I think he is pushing the envelope. And I don't necessarily think that he's going to split those guys evenly. I think he's going to go with a hot hand, who's ever hot. And it's going to be interesting to see how they attack A&M because both A&M opponents have had success running the ball. So if you run the ball, then you'd think maybe they need to have Lagway in there more, because if Johnson, their good running back, can complement him, then why not go ahead and have a running threat in there? So I'll be interested to see how they use both those, because you still got to throw downfield as well. So maybe Mertz would be more accurate. But I think, we're going to see. I just think, like, you're right. Anytime a coach doesn't have a number one starter, you're playing with fire, because if you make the wrong choice or you don't win, fans are on you even more. Oh, why didn't you play Mertz more? Why didn't you do Lagway? Yeah.
A&M saw that firsthand in 2015 with Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray, and ended up losing both of them.
Yeah.
But this is a game I think that A&M's defense is gonna they're gonna have a spotlight on them, and it's kind of twofold. A&M's pass rush. Elko said he's not too concerned. They've only got 1 sack through 2 games. He says they've pressured the quarterback pretty well, which I think is true. You think about the way Leonard played in the Notre Dame game, and Six Killer, by the way. Holy cow, what a name! But A&M really got to him a couple times on those interceptions where he was pressured pretty hard. But if it is Lagway, which I think Florida fans are really hoping it's Lagway, he seems to be their future. It's going to be interesting because A&M's run defense, Elko is pretty frank. It's been terrible so far this season. And you saw what Leonard did in the first game, running the ball, especially on that last drive when Notre Dame just drove down the field and silenced Kyle Field. What are you kind of making of where A&M's at on defense right now, Cease?
I'm interested in what Elko said, because just seeing the game once, I don't have time to see it a second time, third time. Wish I could. I thought the defensive line was getting decent pressure, but everybody knows you got 3 seconds. Get rid of that ball. So everybody comes in, they don't hold on to the ball. And I see last week the 2 interceptions was because of the rush. And really their 1 sack was a gift, because Leonard was running the ball. That shouldn't have been a sack. That was just a yard loss. But that's beside the point. I'm more concerned about A&M giving up the running yardage, because even McNeese, and you could say, well, and he said they had second and third stringers in, but they're better than McNeese's first string, and they couldn't stop them. So that's a concern, because anytime you run at any level, it opens up everything else. So until A&M puts a handle on that running game, I'm a little concerned about this defense, because it doesn't matter how good you are getting to the quarterback if you can't stop the run. Last year, they were one of the best in the nation in run. They were like in the top 13 or 15, not even close this time. So until they bottle that up, I think they're going to have problems. And I think this will be a good test, because it's an SEC opener. A&M needs to do better against the run.
Well, if it is Lagway, you got to wonder how a true freshman quarterback in some capacity is going to fare in his first SEC game. Big lights, afternoon game, could be rainy too. I think something that I'm curious about too is, Scooby Williams didn't play last week. He had a really good grade against Notre Dame, had some really good plays at the line of scrimmage. If he can come back, and not to mention he's probably going to have a little chip on his shoulder playing his old team, what kind of impact he might have on the game, especially in the run game.
Well, I think we saw once again, you mentioned Notre Dame, that 85-yard drive, and along with Leonard, they were consistently getting 3 to 5 yards, sometimes just 4, but you get 3 4s, that's 12, and A&M couldn't stop them. There was no tackles for loss. Notre Dame, with a offensive line that struggled the next week against Northern Illinois, that's what concerns me, because A&M needs, they need all hands on deck, because even with Williams, they were giving up some yardage, but it was also the first game. So I give everybody a pass. Williams is very athletic. You would think him and York would make a good team, but we don't know enough yet. We know Lee can support well out of the secondary. We know Anderson can as well. There's about three good tacklers back there in the A&M secondary. So A&M should be better, and they need them, because they're going to try to establish the run first. They want to take a lot of pressure off Lagway, call safe passes, call safe runs. So A&M better be ready, because the longer that game stays close, the more it favors the home team. And we've seen that in 10 losses. Even Miami, you could say A&M played almost good enough to win at Miami last year, but they didn't. They make the mistakes, and that's what happens when you're on the road and you let the game stay close coming down the stretch.
A couple of guys that showed a little flash last week. Terry Bussey, of course, with the jet sweep touchdown, and then Elko really went out of his way to praise him in the punt return game. And then guy that came back to action was Jabri Barber, who I think A&M was looking forward to getting. See how he was pretty limited in the McNeese game. Curious to see how much they utilize him against Florida, given he's a guy that's kind of got that speed. I definitely thought Cyrus Allen had a better game last week. Should have caught the touchdown pass. Wegman threw a really good ball on that one. DB did make a good play. You got to tip your cap to that kid. But
yeah, A&M doesn't have the go-to receiver yet, and that kind of bothers me. And I don't know how much of that is why isn't Thomas stepping up? Maybe why isn't Wegman picking somebody out? So it's early yet. We'll wait and see. But you need that guy that you can go to when it's 3rd and 5 or what have you. And A&M hasn't done that yet. And one thing I like about A&M, they always say defense travels. Well, special teams travels too. A&M has been very good in special teams the first 2 weeks, and if they continue that, that's how you win on the road as well. You don't make a mistake in the special teams.
Well, hey, special teams won the game for A&M. The last time they went to the Swamp, they made what was it? 4 field goals. Daniel LaCamera,
something like that.
It was an ugly game. Let's be honest. 1917 Florida. Florida one that wore those nasty gator skin uniforms. I mean, it was just a slobber knocker of a game.
Alex and maybe we're going to talk about. I just think this is a huge game because when you look, A&M needs to make hay on the road. They play Mississippi State, they play South Carolina, they play Auburn, and they play Florida. 4 struggling teams. 4 teams picked underneath A&M in the standings. But if you go out in your first big road test, you lose that game. Suddenly South Carolina and Auburn thinking, oh, man, we can win that game. Even Mississippi State's going to circle and go, hey, we might be 3-8, but maybe we can beat A&M. That's why I think this is a huge game.
Not to mention South Carolina had a very dominating win over Kentucky last week. They're kind of riding high going into that LSU game this week. They think they got a shot to win that one.
Well, once again, nothing beats winning. And then if they do, then you're thinking and what I have to laugh is when we talked to the players yesterday, the few that came in, both Turner and Wegman was asked about what's opposing place. They both mentioned South Carolina. And unless you've been there, they have a cool thing going. For whatever reason, they got good acoustics, the music, the fans really get into it. It is a home field advantage.
It's Sandstorm. It's Sandstorm, baby, with the towels. A&M's got their towels, but it's just, I don't know. It's South Carolina. And we talked before the season how, Beamer was a guy that you said seemed like he was trying to convince himself he had a good team.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of shown glimpses that maybe they are a good team. I know they kind of struggled to beat Old Dominion in that first week, and hey, you look up too, and it's like, okay, if A&M loses this game, Bowling Green took Penn State down to the wire, right? Arkansas probably should have beat Oklahoma State.
Yep.
The quarterback there, Taylon Green, he's a problem. Petrino's showing what he's capable of doing when he's just calling plays in his own system. Makes you wonder what happened last year. But, A&M, it gets real pretty quick. I mean, I don't think there's a week, and then you look up, A&M's got Missouri to start October, and then they get a bye week. And then the next 4 games, there's no let up.
College football, the biggest game of the year, coach speak, is really always around the corner for A&M and Florida. This is a huge game. When you look where they want to beat, both of them want to go to be successful. A&M wins this one. Hey, I see a 9-3 somewhere in there. 8-4, decent year. They lose this one. I see possible 6-6 because I was just talking to our main boss, Steve, a little while ago. The problem is there's always a lot of football season left. I get it. There's 9 games left after this, maybe 10. But you start losing games, when are you going to make them up? Then you put pressure on the back end. Oh, you can say, well, A&M can beat Missouri here. They can beat LSU here. True. But if you lose at Florida, That's not a good sign. When do you pick that up? And suddenly you're going to start doubting yourself. That's why these early games are big. No one's flying higher. Like you mentioned, South Carolina and Northern Illinois are flying high right now. It's amazing what one win can do for you.
Did you rank Northern Illinois this week?
No, that was a good deal, and I'm going to talk about that. I didn't have time tonight. I used to be that guy that say like, hey, somebody beats somebody head up, particularly at their place, you got to rank them. Well, it's tough in 2 weeks because I still feel Notre Dame is a top 25 team. Just from what they did against A&M. Now, maybe they're not. And if they're not a top 25 team, then neither is A&M, unless you come back and prove it. So I still think, and a lot of my fellow voters voted the same way, we still think Notre Dame is a top 25 team. Northern Illinois is not. But we're watching them. If they go ahead and beat NC State in a couple of weeks, whatever, maybe Northern Illinois is a top 15 team. But they kind of have to show it. One game was an important game, but that's why we love picking games early because everybody gets ridiculed. Why do you do this? And this is why the College Football Committee waits till you get 4 games. There's not enough data out there. We don't know. Maybe Notre Dame isn't a top 25 team then because Florida State has top 10 talent, but they're out of the top 25. It's such a fine line, and now at the transfer portal more than ever. Every week. And this is why, look at the TV ratings. Look at people going to the games. We're going and we're excited because we don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we're going to find out what happens on Saturday afternoon in the Swamp. Cease and I will be there, so be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage.
Road trip.
Road trip. Hopefully we don't lose you in the casino. But, hey, be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage from Saturday's game. We'll be back next week on the My Aggie Nation podcast.